Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're getting ready for the holiday season. We're going to have a lot of fun today, I can promise you. We're going to start with a quick trip to Nosara, Costa Rica. I understand they have had an incredible big mahi bite there lately with some marlin and sails mixed in. Then we're going to hit the northeast corner of Florida, work our way down the east coast, through the Keys, up the west coast, and out the Panhandle. We're going to find out everything fishy going on in the state of Florida this week. And I got a question for the boys tonight. Last week we talked about what fish had overperformed what we expected in the year 2022. Well, conversely, this year I want to know what fish underperformed. Well, I know for us up here in Northeast Florida, our gag grouper numbers were terrible. Now, they were actually a little better than they were the year before, but they're still a shadow of where they should be. So our fish that overperformed offshore, I felt like was mahi. Inshore, I felt like flounder did very, very well. Offshore, certainly gag grouper have been a big disappointment. I can't wait to check in with Captain David Voorhees and find out what he has been disappointed in this year in Northeast Florida. But let's get it started with a quick trip to Costa Rica to check in with one Craig Sutton. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company. That's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. We're going to start out with a quick trip over to Nosara, Costa Rica. That's where Craig Sutton, the fishing was so good he had to go sample it for himself. I'm a little suspicious that trip maybe wasn't all business, Craig. Is that true?
No, well, sort of. Semi-sort of.
Did you check on the quality of the ballyhoo that your captains have been pulling?
I did at that. Checked on the boat and got to fish Saturday and Sunday. And, the bite, while it slowed up a little bit, and I think it contributed to the current more than anything else, because the current was probably one notch on Saturday and maybe even less on Sunday. But
that to me will kill it every time. Yep.
Well, it will down there for sure. I mean, it definitely has something to do with it. But Saturday we ended up getting 7 and had a sailfish and a marlin up. But the fish are nowhere near as aggressive as they were 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one example, the marlin followed the teaser for probably a real 3 minutes, which seemed like an eternity. He focused on the teaser. We got him. I could have harpooned him. He was right beside the boat, and then we got the teaser real close and kind of veered off that, halfway looked at my pitch bait, but just never attacked it. And then, about 5 minutes earlier, the same thing happened with the sailfish. And then Sunday we had a sailfish come up and do the same thing, just kind of followed it, and stayed back there,
Yep.
For a while. It was, it was just kind of unusual. But, I've seen it before like that. But still, I mean, Sunday we still had 4 gaffers, all nice fish. Big one, I think, at 28 on the broker grip. So, it's still
nice
good fishing.
Fish. Yeah, still good fishing.
Yeah.
No, and I'm with you, Craig. I had a really, really nice blue one get right in the middle of 4 baits. Just right smack dab in the middle, followed the boat for a good 5 minutes, never looked at a bait that I could tell. We put baits in front of them. We did everything. He didn't care. When they're not hungry, they're just not hungry. And I agree with you 100%. One of the biggest factors in that is no current. And I don't know why, but they seem to get lazy when there's no current. Beats me. All right, buddy. How are you booking? Are a lot of people getting a trip to Garza for their for Christmas?
You mean to go fishing? Yeah. I mean, we're busy next year. We've got a lot of dates kind of, totally booked. I think February now is almost 100% booked.
Oh, good.
March is getting close. January, of course, is all booked up. But, we can always fit somebody in, especially the big groups. It's always a problem. The small groups is a problem.
Yep. I know it. I tell you what. Now, and of course, the name of your establishment is Nosara. The city where you are is Garza, if people want to look up where it is on the map, right?
No, it's Nosara. There is a town called Nosara, inland from us, but that's the area, the name for the area. D.O.A, D-U-I-O-N-E-S, is technically the beach community that we're located in.
Huh.
But Garza is where the boats are moored, which is 2 miles, a little over 2 miles south of D.O.A Beach.
You can't give me a break for 2 flipping miles, Sutton. I mean, come on. You got to get on me about the wrong place. Oh, that's 2 miles away. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, it's just where the boats are moored.
I know.
People want to go to Google Earth.
One of my favorite places in the world, the home of every happy dog I've ever seen. Craigie,
Ricky, they were asking about you yesterday too.
How's my boy Jagger doing?
Doing good, man.
Is he?
Good.
How old is that dog now?
No telling. Who knows?
He's going to live forever. He never eats anything but yellowfin tuna.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Craigie, we appreciate it so much. I hope you have a great holidays. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and we will talk with you next week.
Sounds good, brother.
Thank you, pal. Craig Sutton from Garza, Costa Rica. There, I said it. Actually, it's Nosara, Costa Rica. Our thanks to Craig Sutton for a great report from Nosara, Costa Rica. Now, let's check in the corner of Northeast Florida with Captain David Bories. Skip, how we doing?
Hey, Ricky, Ben, everything's chilling down right now.
Chilling down is right. It's cold.
Yep, it's starting to get cold. And, we were talking last week, and I was telling you, the water hasn't quite gotten clear yet. And, I said, man, this is the time of year where the water's getting clear. I think I know why it's not so clear.
Okay.
So we've got an influx of a lot of roe mullet. The mullet are really in thick. The commercial guys are out netting them in large amounts, and these are really, really big roe mullet. And we've been seeing a lot of them these last few weeks. But the water temperature is probably going to drop. We got a little cold snap coming. This is going to be. We're looking at a possible hard freeze. First time we've seen one in quite some time. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen. It should really clean this water up. I think as far as the red fishing goes, it could shut it down a little bit or make it tough. But, you just got to wait after these cold fronts. You sort of got to give it a few days, let these fish get acclimated, and they'll start biting again. Now, this week, we did get a good number of trout. Although they were small and not too many legals, we did catch a good number. What's a good number? Maybe 20 trout.
Oh, that's good. No, 20 trout's not bad, David. That's not
bad.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time where you caught 20, they'd probably laugh at you. Some nice flounder this week. I'm really surprised to see we're still getting some good flounder. There's still being some, 3, 4, even some 5-pounders being caught. So, that's pretty good. Reports of guys catching some black drum. I can't seem to catch them. I've been looking for them, but I can't seem to catch the black drum. But there are plenty around,
David.
From what I hear,
I can't let something go that you said. It's bugging me. You think the water's dirty because of roe mullet?
Well, I think mullet tend to dirty the water up. They tend to really, and I don't recall seeing some of the schools of mullet I'm seeing now, Rick.
Good.
I mean, these are massive schools. I even had a guy call, and he says, "Oh man, I saw a big school of reds. There had to be hundreds and hundreds of reds." And I said, "Now, you sure those were reds?" And he started describing what he saw, And I said, man, I hate to disappoint you. And he was like, man, they wouldn't hit anything.
They won't. That's true.
No. And I was like, man, I hate to disappoint you, but I think what you were seeing was a big school of roe mullet. And they will. Sometimes you come up on them in the shallow flats, and, man, they'll hump the water up, and you'll think you're seeing a big school of reds, but it's the big old roe mullet.
Yep. I've certainly seen plenty of commercial boats throwing nets. Hey, David, I got one more question for you before you go.
Okay.
We talked about last week, we talked about flounder because flounder have been so strong this year, and that's a fish that performed better in 2022 than we thought they would. Give me the other side. What fish really disappointed you this year?
Ooh, that's pretty well. I'm gonna have to. There's two things that's disappointed me, and one is not necessarily the fish, but the quality of the fish. And I'm gonna have to say the big disappointment has been the slot redfish. And I've talked with a lot of captains, and we sort of all seem to think, when we went to that 2 fish per person, sort of we think we really did overfish a lot of these slot size reds, and we're just not seeing the number of slot fish. You catch a ton of rat reds. You catch a ton of oversized reds, but you struggle to get those reds in the 20 to 26 inch range. They're hard to get. They're hard to find. And on a good day, you might get 4 or 5, and you're excited with that. But as far as a species go, I'd have to say the trout, and they've been disappointing for years now. We just haven't seen up here in Northeast Florida. We haven't seen the good numbers of trout, and it hasn't been. I haven't seen where it's been improving. I'll think we'll get a little run of them, but it peters out as quick as I get excited. It's over with. We're just not seeing the trout we used to see. Really.
I agree with you, David, and I think it's water quality. I really do, because I know that there's a lot more boats on the water, but there's also a much stronger conservation ethic than there used to be. There's a lot more guys releasing trout than they used to, and I think it's water quality. I think we've got trout. I just don't think they're living as long. Why? I don't know. But I guess time will tell. Cap, we appreciate it so much. I hope you have a fabulous holiday season, and we'll talk with you soon.
Absolutely, Ricky. I'll be here, buddy.
Thank you, David. Captain David Bories from Northeast Florida. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of our podcasters. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. I just don't want to do it anymore, he's credited with saying. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait did and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? Now, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and sometimes we still get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd still rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone Fishing 68 years later. Our thanks to David Bories for a great Northeast Florida report. Time for East Central. That means it's Jimmy Ross time. What's going on, Cap?
It's one of those weeks, Rick. The fish are a little fussy, but when they do turn on, the bite is really good. Here's the question. When do I go? Yeah. Well, you go when they're biting. And obviously that's kind of a general stupid answer. But here's what I'm going to tell you about that. When they're biting right now is the incoming tide at the inlets. You're going to get snook and redfish and a couple of flounder. And then in the lagoon systems, the bite's actually been better between 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
I don't know why,
so
but
you got to pick one or the other. Yeah.
They're feeding on that minor in the lagoon system right now. They're not feeding on the morning major very good at all. And I think it has to do with the dropping water temperatures and these cooler nights we've had, water temperatures dropping. And even though you would think they would be feeding on that major, they've been feeding on that midday to almost afternoon minor for the last 3 days.
Jim, do you now you, like I, are a deer hunter. Do you put more stock in major and minor feeds In the woods or on the water?
I do it more. Actually, I do it more in the woods.
Yep. I do too. And my reason is there's a lot more factors on the water.
You're exactly right, Rick. There's so many more variables that you have to take into account that can trigger a bite or shut a bite down in the lagoon system and even offshore. If you get a wind out of the north, you're going to shut 3/4 of the fish down that we have down here. Now, the sailfish may turn on, but and the sheephead may turn on, but you're going to lose, you're going to lose a good majority of your trout, your redfish, your snook, your tarpon are definitely going to shut down on the north wind. So you have to look at what the day is going to give you and try to figure out, okay, if I'm only going to be on the water for a portion of today, if you're on it all day, it doesn't matter. Just enjoy yourself. Have a good time.
Yep.
But if you're on it for a portion of the day, you've only got an hour or two to spend. You want to look right now at the mid part of the day because it's the warmest. You want to try and find a day when the wind is not blowing due north or due east. Those two winds in the central east region are death to the bite unless you get 3 or 4 consecutive days of it, because there's an exception to every rule. And that minor right now being in the middle of the day in conjunction with the warmer part of the day, that's when they've been feeding. Now, here's the good part that's going to happen. The warmest part of the day towards this next weekend and then the following good portion of the following week is going to be in the middle of the day. We're going to get some drastically cold temperatures come this coming weekend. And I think that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I think with that minor going away and that major taking over in the middle of the day, it's in the morning at the beginning of this week, but now in the later part of the week and first part of next week, it's going to be in the middle of the day. That's when I think you're going to see the really, really strong bite occur.
Okay. All right. Real quick before I let you go, we've talked about which fish overperformed in 2022. We felt like we had better seasons than we expected to have. All right. Conversely, this week, what fish was the biggest disappointment to you this year in terms of how it produced? Redfish. David Bories,
by far redfish.
David Bories gave me the same answer.
Yeah, our redfish they're in trouble. They really are.
Really?
CCA, as we've mentioned in the past, CCA is trying to start a restocking program, but FWC has shut down redfish in a good majority of my region simply because there's so few fish in this region. When they do their samplings, angler reports and the netting samplings that they do out on the lagoon system, we don't have redfish. They have left this area. They have died off. They have been eaten by dolphin. They have done various other things.
Wow.
And so our redfish fishery, just 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we were touting ourselves as the redfish capital of the world. Now, obviously, none of us had been to Louisiana at that point.
Yeah.
But as far as redfish in Florida go, we were it. We were it.
Oh, yeah.
You want a sight cast to tailing redfish in the flats?
Clearly,
and it didn't matter.
That.
Yeah. And it didn't matter if it was 12 inches of water and it was a 20-inch redfish, or if it was in 36 inches of water and it was a 45-inch redfish. We had tailing redfish year-round 15 and 20 years ago. And now, I don't even remember the last time I saw a redfish tailing in the banana or Indian. Now, the mosquito, there's still a little bit of that. But in the Indian and banana, I can't tell you that. It's been 2 years since I've actually seen a redfish tail.
Real quickly, how much of that do you lay on water quality?
Everything.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
Everything. Because the grass is gone. Because the grass is gone, they have nowhere to hide. Redfish in particular, trout will do this as well, but redfish in particular have to have grass in this region because there's so few other types of structures. We don't have undercut mangrove banks. We don't have shell bars that they can get in. We don't have spartina grass that they can hide in from predators. And we have a huge number of dolphin, and they predate on the dolphin predate on redfish and trout primarily. They'll chase a mullet, they'll chase a ballyhoo or a needlefish around, but if they can get themselves a snook, redfish, or trout, they're on it all day long.
Yeah.
And without the grass, and in the redfish in particular, in our region, because we don't have those undercut banks, and a good majority of it, our banks, the closer you get to the bank, the shallower the water gets. So they can't hide up in the mangrove roots as easily, especially in the dead of summer and the dead of winter when the waters are at low pool. And so what they would do is they would simply sink down and lay in the grass. And the grass was tall enough, it would grow completely over them. And it was like a blanket. And the dolphin could swim right past them and never know they were there. Right. Now they don't have that security blanket. They don't have that hideout. And now they're just sitting ducks. And so the fish that are still here, there's very, very few places that you're going to find them spread all over the flat like we once did. The places you're going to find them are places where they can get protection from the dolphin.
Very well said, Jim. And don't forget the sharks; they're in on it too. But
and they're getting more numerous.
They're getting worse.
Yep. We're seeing more and more in the Indian and Banana River Lagoon systems the last couple of years.
I got you, Cap. We're going to keep right on fishing. Hopefully, we got a better stretch ahead of us. I think you're going to see some clearer water with this cooler water, so maybe that'll make things easier. I hope so. But by all means, happy holidays, and I'm looking forward to talking with you next week.
I am too. And on a brighter note, like you said, which fish overperformed? Snook and tarpon.
Yep.
Snook and tarpon have well overperformed. So there's still fish to go chase.
Oh, yeah.
We just have lost what we were known for. And hopefully one day we'll get it back.
Well, how many did CCA put in the lagoon? 15,000?
They put 15,000 in the Banana River, and they put another 10,000 up in Volusia County. They're putting somewhere around that number in Martin, St. Lucie counties as well, and Indian River County. So we're going to see more redfish coming, but we still need the habitat to come back. The Clam Restoration Project is helping with that. The Indian River Lagoon Restoration Project is helping with that. The National Estuaries Foundation is helping with that. There's a lot of things that are going on to help water quality, but it's going to take time.
Gotcha. Thank you, Jimmy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Captain Jim Ross from East Central. You know, I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report where, man, I tell you what, the condition of the Mosquito Lagoon is something that all Floridians have got to get involved in preserving. I tell you another place that needs an awful lot of help from us, and that's Stewart Inlet. How we doing down there, John Earhart?
I'm doing good, Rick. Glad to be here.
We're mighty glad to have you, son. You got a fish story for me?
Yeah.
What's going
now,
on?
We got sailfish tournaments going on. We've had hit or miss sail fishing, but with this cold front coming in and these strong north winds, I have a feeling we're going to be seeing some phenomenal sail fishing off the Treasure Coast. We've been getting a bunch of mahi, some nice blackfin tunas, and kingfish as well. But right now, everybody's focused on the sailfish, and that's been 90 to 160 feet of water. A lot of that's been north of the St. Lucie Inlet. You know, some guys are going up as far as Cape Canaveral to catch the big migration. But generally, Palm Beach to Fort Pierce is where the majority of the fishing is going to take place right now. And if you're out there during the migration when the fish are in our general area, it can be some of the season's best sail fishing.
Boy, it can. There's a lot of days it takes a big old battle wagon to do it, to battle those north winds. But if you can hang in there through a little rough weather, if you've never experienced it, you have to. It is just that much fun. And, John, it seems like the blackfin numbers have been good all up and down the coast. You mentioned them, too. Is anything going on inshore?
Yeah, the inshore fishing's been pretty good. We're catching a lot of black drum, sheep's head, redfish. Had a good influx of pompano this week, so
good.
We're definitely drifting the flats and jigging part of the day to try and catch a few pompano. I gotta tell you, I love fresh pompano on the dinner table. That's one of my favorites inshore.
Me and you. Now, do you like to grill them, or what do you do to them?
I like them grilled, sautéed, and believe it or not, deep fried. Breaded and fry it. Man, huh. I like fresh pompano fried.
I got you. I've never tried that, but I will now. Hey, before I let you go, John, last week we talked about what fish in your area was a little better this year. What fish this year, the year 2022, has disappointed? What did it seem like you've had a lack of?
I'd say, honestly, the biggest disappointment for me this year was our annual cobia run.
Right.
Typically we catch a lot of cobia February, March, April, May, even into the summer, and it was just dismal. I mean, I still caught cobias, but not like previous seasons when I could go out with the mayhem and we would catch limits of them, two times a day with ease. Hopefully these cobia restrictions will help the population, and we'll see a upward trend in more fish in our region for the following seasons with these new regulations.
I think we will, because the wintertime run up here off Northeast Florida has been pretty good. And if everybody will buy in, if you go 2 cobia per boat per day, I think we give them a real chance, John, and I think we could learn a real lesson from them if we get the resurgence in them. I think more and more guys would buy into tighter fisheries management because there's so many boats on the ocean now. But I agree with you. I don't think the cobia run was much. Here's hoping for better days. Man, I hope you have a great Christmas, and we'll talk with you next week if that's okay.
Yes, sir. I'll give you an updated sailfish report next week.
I'll be ready. Thank you, John. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great Stewart report. Now, let's hop on down to Kokomo, check in Islamorada at Bud and Mary's with Captain Brandon Storen. Bean, how you doing?
I'm great, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding, buddy. Any fishing going on down there this week?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What are they catching?
In the backcountry, the snook bite has been really good, and we're putting up big numbers of snook. And also some more drum have moved down, some red drum and black drum. It must be getting a little colder north of here. And some mangrove snappers for dinner. And offshore, there's been a lot of really nice sized yellowtail snapper and some muttons and black groupers biting. And it seems like a few more sailfish have made their way down. Maybe this cold front we're about to get will push even more down.
We got a booger coming now. I mean, we have got a booger of a cold front coming. There ain't no doubt about that.
Bring it on.
Yep. I know you guys down south love that. It's going to hard freeze up here in Jacksonville, I tell you. Let me ask you a question, Bean. Last week, the topic of discussion was what fish had done better than we expected. What fish were above expectations in 2022. This week, we're talking about what fish didn't show up this year. What was a species that disappointed you this year? You just didn't have the numbers you thought you should have.
Mahi for offshore and tarpon in the backcountry.
Gotcha. Okay.
We had such a terrible mahi season this past summer. We had like a good month of October for mahi.
Right. I remember that.
But that was it. And as far as the tarpon goes, it seems like the big migration of the spawning tarpon went straight to Tampa.
Huh.
It's like I heard that they go and spawn off the shores of Islamorada and 500 feet of water offshore.
Right.
And some years they go way out in the Gulf and spawn. So the theory is this past tarpon season, they went out in the Gulf and spawned and then came straight inshore to Tampa. So for the two fish that for this year, that was pretty disappointing was mahi and tarpon.
Tarpon. I tell you a funny tarpon story, Brandon. I was down in Islamorada as a kid, probably 19, 20 years old, running my old 19 Robalo, and we were well off of the hump, and I saw something on the surface and went over, and it was a huge school of tarpon, just like you're talking about, and they were way offshore. Like I said, they're offshore of the hump, and right in the middle of the school, right, just like he belonged there, right in the middle of the school was a blue marlin.
Really?
I don't know what he thought. Did he think he was going to eat one, or I don't know what he thought, but he was just cruising along with him. It was a wild scene, I promise you.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's the sight to see.
Yeah, it was indeed. It still sticks with me.
He probably thought he can hide in the big school tarpon from the Makos.
That could be. That's a very real possibility. There's no doubt.
Strength in numbers.
Boy, I would imagine that a Mako's dream would be to see a school of tarpon swimming along. I mean, doesn't get any better than that, buddy.
Oh, yeah, a group of like 50-pounders, you know?
Woo, hello. Yep, hello.
that would be something to see one trying to chase one down, because the tarpon are not easy to catch.
No, and I have seen pictures of tarpon that have had huge bites taken out of them that were covered. I mean, and they're obviously very, very tough, but I've seen basketball-sized bites taken out of the midsection of a tarpon, and they just heal and they grow back together and swim on. So more power to them.
With my own eyes, I've watched them swim out the mouths of hammerheads and bull sharks, where you just feel like, oh man, he got a hold of them, and then they just swim out of their mouth.
Yep.
Kind of like a pinfish does to a snook sometimes.
Yep, that's exactly right. Cap, we appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely.
All right. Merry Christmas to you and Esther. Y'all take care.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Captain Brandon Storen from Islamorada. Now we're going to go west. Hey, what a great pleasure it is to welcome back Greg Stamper. Greg Stamper, of course, has been with us forever, but the hurricane really impacted him, and he's been off of the podcast for a while. I am waiting to catch up, so let me get a hold of Greg Stamper for us.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalube marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is the mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species, from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now, a very happy time for me. It is such a pleasure to welcome back one of my favorite podcasters that the hurricane took away from us because it impacted him far more than it did most of us, and it is such a pleasure to welcome back Captain Greg Stamper. Snook Stamp Charters, how we doing?
I'm doing all right, Rick. I told you I'd be back, and starting to get my shoes wet again. So we're moving forward down here in Southwest Florida.
Do you have a whole new appreciation for getting up in the morning and going fishing?
Oh, I'd love to go every day right now if I could. That's not reality. But we have been out, and to be quite honest, there's a blessing in everything that happened. The lack of boats in my area and jet skis and all the other stuff that we used to have has really made the fishing outstanding, even on the days where you don't think it'll be that good. So we're moving through it, and as time goes by, we'll see how it all turns out. But I'm back in the water. I'm getting wet. I pricked my fingers a few times, Rick, and life is good.
I understand. Well, you mentioned that your fishing's been pretty good. What's biting?
So, a lot of times I'm in Estero Bay in those areas, very close to where everything was impacted hard by Ian. And there are so few boats out there right now, and we have no jet ski tours. We have none of that, no rental boats. It's just like a vacant area. And it's unbelievable, Rick, to see some of the fishing as good as it can be. I mean, I'm talking about major channels with schools of black drums in the hundreds.
Ooh. Just
moving around casually because they're not scared right now. The redfish bite, there's one other captain that's been running out of the same marina with me. And I told him, I said, man, that was crazy. We had a day, we caught 21 redfish in 4 hours.
That's a good day. Yes, sir. That is a good day.
And we're not picking on like one spot that's just clicking really good. There's a bunch of the same size. We're talking about the Estero Bay Reds, which are upwards of the mid-20s up to 33, 34 inches, and they were packed in. The trout bite continues to be fantastic. And some of the other stuff was kind of weird, and now we have a cold front. It's going to be different now, but the snook bite this entire last 2 weeks, I was out 3 times, which I was lucky to be out there 3 times. But the 3 times I was out, the snook bite was insane.
Now, Greg, I've got to ask you, how much did Ian rearrange your area to fish? I mean, the big thing up here that happens when we get a bad one and our offshore waters, so many of the wrecks get moved. They either break apart into pieces and we find a piece a quarter mile away or whatever. How much of your waterfront, which is more your area, how much of it got rearranged?
So I have not been out to any of my numbers for the wrecks and reefs. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you about what has moved, broke up, whatever. But we had 15 feet of surge in my neighborhood. Okay, so
wow.
What we have in our backcountry areas that I fish, I'm a snook, redfish, trout guy in general. I like to go catch slams for my clients. We have a ton of debris, a lot of trees, a lot of, when I say trees, I mean like the whole tree in the water. There's still a lot of cars. There's parts of homes. They're doing the best they can to clean out some of this stuff. So there's a lot of structure. It's not, it's not really safe for just a general boater who's used to running around to be out there right now. You got to put some time on the water. I'm going into areas right now that I would normally run straight into. I'm going in on idle because I don't want to hit things. So we have so much structure right now that wasn't there before that's going to hold fish, Rick. Let's just be honest. These are like little miniature reefs throughout the entire bay. And that's what I've seen the most of. I can't tell you a lot about offshore, nearshore. Well, offshore, not me. Nearshore, I can't really tell you about the wrecks and the reefs that I used to fish for permit, but I can tell you that we have some movement of sandbars. We've had there's a few cuts between islands that were never there before, which are very good on incoming and outgoing tides, and we'll talk about that down the line. But there's a lot going on right now, Rick, that I'm still exploring. I'm not out there every day like I used to be. I will be soon.
Yep.
My boat will be done in February, and then I'll be full-time hammering it again. But right now, we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Cap, that is fantastic news. I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. And if there's a thing in the world that we can do to help move that along, please let me know.
Not a problem at all.
All right.
Just know I'll be here, and moving forward, I'll talk to you more.
Fishermen take care of each other, brother. That's what we do. All right, Greg, great to have you back. Have a wonderful Christmas and a great New Year, and we'll talk with you in a week.
You as well. Tight lines, Rick.
Tight lines, buddy. Academy Sports and Outdoors' mission is to provide fun for the whole family by carrying all the best gear from top brands including Columbia, Yeti, Costa, Penn, Shimano, and so many more at prices that you're going to love. Whether you're planning on spending the day at the beach, hosting the friends in the backyard, reeling in a big fish, or gearing up for the game, Academy has a wide assortment of sports and outdoor products that will guarantee you that you're going to have fun out there. Hey, Academy has just opened their new store in Panama City, and look out, Tampa, here they come. You're next on the list. It's a dynamic and fun shopping experience while also offering convenient options such as buy online, pick up in store, and free shipping on most online orders over $25. When shopping at Academy, customers are going to be able to take advantage of some great in-store services. How about they'll assemble your grill for you or your bike? How about scope mounting, bore sighting, line winding and spooling, propane exchanges? They've got the pros to get it done, and the ability to purchase hunting and fishing licenses. With Academy's best price guarantee, if you find a better advertised price anywhere, not only will Academy match it, but they'll beat it by 5%. Until the new store in Tampa opens, you can shop online at academy.com or through Academy's mobile app. You can sign up for email alerts, receive digital ads, offers, and exchange with Academy's social media accounts. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. Our thanks to Greg Stamper and a big welcome. Glad to have him back on the podcast. And now, the trouble spot of Florida, the West Central, where the red tide has risen its ugly head once again. Ray, please tell me that red tide's gone.
Well, I wish I could. I mean, some areas it's not really that present, and there's some real light doses of it. But South Pinellas right now, around Terre Verde, Fort DeSoto, Maximo, we got dead fish floating. So, but on a positive note, if you move around, you can find some areas that don't have it.
Good.
Sarasota Bay seems to be in relatively good shape. It's some of the guys I spoke with this week that are fishing down Sarasota. They're catching snook, they're catching trout, redfish, Spanish mackerel, bluefish. So quite a potpourri for having absolutely nothing there less than a year ago. The east side of Tampa Bay, they're doing pretty good with a bunch of redfish over there and some snook that are running up the rivers. Trout fishing's been kind of so-so and spotty, but some areas that have trout, there's fairly good concentration. It's just really weird. Now, all I can think of is that this red tide just continues to move fish.
Sure.
If it doesn't kill them, it's going to move them. So, you know, it's one of those deals. If you want to go out fishing and catch a few, just be ready to go move when you're not catching, and when you do, stop.
Yep.
So, guys offshore, but I'll tell you a good thing on the offshore deal. And we don't have much time left in the gag grouper season, but the end of the month, it's over with. But the guys that are getting out there, I don't care if it's shallow water gag fishing inside Tampa Bay, they are whacking them. Getting offshore, the guys that are hitting the middle grounds and 100, 150 feet, they're getting some 20, 30, 35-pound fish. So that area is pretty doggone good.
Buddy, I tell you what, I gag grouper and hog snapper fished out of Crystal River last Sunday. What a blast. I mean, oh my gosh. I had no idea hogfish were so much fun, or that there were so many of them. There's a lot of hogfish around, Ray.
Well, this time of year, they start moving in a little bit shallower, and most of the areas around here, you can get them from anywhere from 30 to 50, 70 feet, something like that. Mm-hmm. But once you get the further offshore to a certain point, the fish seem to get bigger. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you can catch your limit of fish that are, you know, a little smaller size, and you only have to go maybe 30 feet to do it.
Right.
That's not all that far, 5, 6 miles, 7 miles. And the guys that are doing it, almost every single one of them are using live shrimp. So and the live shrimp are a whole lot easier to keep alive than sardines and all kinds of other bait fish, especially if you have to run through a patch of red tide. All they do is close off the well and circulate.
Okay. All right. So if you've got live shrimp and you get to where the water's burning your eyes, turn your pump off and put on the recirc, right?
You know, the craziest thing about live shrimp, I don't know. I know lots of guys that have done this, and I did this as a kid, is that we didn't always have live wells to take with us. Sometimes we had a bait bucket, but, you know, you're even better off just taking a small cooler, wet newspaper, and some ice, and put them in between layers of that newspaper, and most of them will stay alive.
How funny is that? How funny is that? I know it's true, though, because I've seen it done. Cap, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week, and I'm counting on your news getting better and better.
I may be shaking off some cold here. Coming up starting tomorrow, we got a cold front that's coming through, and they tell us by sometime around Christmas we may be seeing 30s here. So that may put the clamp on the bite, but we'll see.
Yep, it was 28 in my deer stand this morning. It's coming this way.
Oh my God!
All right,
better you than me.
Yeah, thank you, Cap. We'll talk next week. Captain Ray Markham. Our thanks to Ray Markham for a great West Central report. Now, we're going to hop up to the mayor of Homosassa and check in with one William Tony. William, how are you?
Doing good, bud. Sitting right down here at downtown Homosassa in front of McCrae's and the Monkey Bar and Crump's Landing, watching a beautiful evening.
Are you stuck in traffic? I mean, what's going on? I mean,
well, no, it's been pretty slow here. Matter of fact, my truck and trailer is back down the ramp, and I just double checked, and nope, there ain't nobody coming, so that's where it's sitting.
that's my kind of conversation. You get out of your truck while the boat's on the trailer to sit and talk with the boys for a few minutes. I can handle that.
It's all right. It's all right. I can look down the street. If I see someone coming, you know, they got the other side. They'll be all right.
If they're coming to launch now, they're pretty hardy.
Yeah.
How far from Crystal River are you?
Now, as a crow flies, basically to the Crystal River, I would say 7 miles.
Okay.
Now, by car, about 15 minutes. Now, if you run outside the Homosassa River and there's an inside pass, Rock Island Channel, I can run my boat around and up into Kings Bay in about 45 minutes.
Okay. Well, in case you notice in your waters, in case in the next couple of weeks you say, God, we just don't seem to have the same number of gag grouper, and we don't seem to have the same number of hogfish, you'll know why. Okay. They're in my freezer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Just so you know.
So,
I came and stole them right out from under your nose.
I'm glad that you got some, because, you know, it's about to shut down, and you won't have much of a chance after that.
That's right. You were probably sitting there talking to the boys at McCrae's while I was putting up hogfish and grouper. That's probably what I was doing. But not many more days to do that, is there?
No, we're running out of time, Rick. You know, and the bad thing about it is, normally, we've gotten so used to having such mild winters that it's no big deal between now and New Year's to get out there and, you know, put some grouper in the box and some hogfish. But we're looking at some pretty serious cold weather coming down the pike here by the end of the week.
Roger that. It's about to be as cold as we've seen in a few years. And I, for one, I'm sorry it comes right at the end of your grouper season. I really am, but I've been ready for some cold weather. There's some bugs that live around my deer stand. They need to die, William. They need to bite the dust, buddy.
Well, if we could get that to take care of our gnats, you know, that's our biggest problem. The mosquitoes don't stand a chance. It's been so dry here, but the gnats are pretty brutal on us out there hunting right now.
Boy, don't we know it. Tell me how your fishing's been this week.
All right, fishing. You know, today I've been catching my limit of trout and redfish.
Good.
And actually, today on the outside, believe it or not, we've had some, you know, upper 30 temperatures, you know, this week and in the last week. But there was some snook on the outside, so it was an indicator to me that our water temperature is about 67 out in the Gulf right now. which is pretty good. So your trout, if you want to get some trout, now this is bar any weather. I'm not a weatherman. I'm just trying to tell you where you could probably catch some fish. But we'll start there around Fish Creek and Mason Creek, fishing either Mirror watermelon red flake Little Johns or the Provoker on a red jig head in the deeper parts of the channel down toward the bottom. Don't make it too fast. You're not going to get the bite. If you make it fast, it ain't going to happen. It's a little tick in your line, so you got to fish it slow and low. Now, the redfish, we need some tide. They're still around some in the St. Martin's Keys, but I'm afraid that everything's going to change. So I'm going to give you my thesis on what's going to happen. When we get these big fronts coming this week, you're going to get confined into the rivers, Crist River, Homosassa, and Chesapeake. And we haven't had any cold weather like they've been talking about in the last few years, so it does usher the fish in. So you want to procure some good shrimp and keep that in your boat. You want to stay in the river because it's going to be a hard northeast wind, and you want to fish the deeper parts of the channel with those shrimp on the bottom, either a knocker rig. I like to pinch the tail off and put them on a jig head and fish those deeper holes. You'll get black drum, redfish, a few trout. Sometimes you can get them on a jig. If you catch one trout on a shrimp, what I suggest is switching over to a jig and go back to that slow and low method again for the trout. But anywhere up toward the springs in Homosassa or Crist River, you'll have a good chance of catching some keeper mangrove snapper. It keeps the kids happy and the family from up north in action. And plus, seeing all the manatees, it's a good time. But recommend bundle up.
Yeah, because by anybody's standards, not just our standards, by anybody's standards, it's going to be downright chilly. Hey, William, before you go, we last week talked about fish that have exceeded expectations in 2022, so we kind of got to touch on the other end too. What were you disappointed in 2022?
Well, Rick, it wasn't really a fish. I would say our Big Bend here in Florida needs to really take a hard look at our scallop season and our scallop population. And I've talked about it before, but I believe they're over harvested.
Yeah.
So we got to look at it really hard and look at it as an economic point for our small communities along the Gulf Coast here. If we want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, or do we want to, nurture it and make sure that we can, power through this hard time where we're not getting as many, or figure out what the problem is. And again, I always point to overharvest, but, it's something that is very viable to our small communities along the Gulf Coast. And I believe that is my pet peeve. I don't like to see our scallops disappear. I like to have folks come here to our area and have a good time and have enough to take home and eat. But this past season was a big disappointment.
William, you're not kidding. I came over, as you remember, with my family, and we had you in the water with a lifetime of scalloping, and my grandsons working as hard as they could. It is clearly not what it was 5 to 10 years ago.
Absolutely. And, there was some different methods. UF got involved and also seeded the scallops. And there's could be some things like that could happen. But I think really instead of like some of the ideas of throwing money to it toward like having a scallop permit or things like that, it needs to be more toward regulation and letting them rest. Yep. Maybe a small season, like a mini season, like they do in the Keys for lobster.
Right.
And then maybe just open it up August and this, by then kids are in school. There'll be less people during the week and give it a rest for a little bit, let it build back up so that we don't have to have a closure, because that to me, that might be the only way for them to sustain and stay in our area so we can have them in the future. So, it's kind of a hard look, and I know it may hurt the small businesses, but you can't rely on Mother Nature to make your dime. You got to let her give it to you.
Cap, never heard it said better. Thank you so much, William. We appreciate your report so much, and bundle up. It's going to get cold, but we will talk next week and have a great Christmas between now and then.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you, William. Hey, it's finally fall, and how many of us have been waiting for the magic of the mullet run to start? There are literally miles of mullet moving along just about every area of Florida coastline. What you need to cash in on the tarpon, snook, reds, trout, sharks, etc. that are feeding on the poor fingerlings is the perfect mullet imitation. Well, for my money, you can skip all the high-dollar made-in-China mullet imitators. For me and all the podcasters I've talked with, the perfect mullet imitation is made right here in Stuart, Florida, and it's the D.O.A. Bait Buster. Mark Nichols, the owner and manufacturer of D.O.A., spent years designing different bait busters to swim shallow, medium, or deep. What makes the bait buster so special? I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the tail. If your bait buster is moving, the tail is flapping. No predator can stand that tail flapping in his face. The D.O.A. Bait Buster. It's the perfect mullet run bait. Now, let's come on around the corner into the northwest area because I want to find out what Captain Kevin Lanier thinks. Kevin, what fish this year were you disappointed in? I know you had some fishing that was fantastic this year, but some species didn't do as well.
Captain Rick, we're seeing a decline in the summertime the last couple of years in gag grouper. I mean, we're catching them in the fall, we're catching them in the winter, but summertime they're just getting more and more scarce and harder to find.
Now, common thought on that for me would be in the summertime it's calm, the boats can get out, and they get pounded, whereas in the wintertime they get a couple of weeks quite often between days to bunch back up. Does that make sense, or does that not make sense in this case?
Well, that makes sense to a point, but I think a lot of it has to do with the water temperature, the colder, the warmer water.
Okay.
I mean, I think what's happening to us is I think we're seeing an overall warming in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep.
And I think what's happening is it's pushing those gags further and further out, stay in some cooler water.
That could be. Now, when you get further offshore, do the numbers seem good out there, or is it not as easy out there as it should be in the summertime?
Well, the problem is we got the shark predation, and that's the big issue.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, you could throw all the theories, all the disappointment, everything out the window, and if we don't address the shark predation issue, we're not going to have a fishery in 5 years.
Yep. I don't disagree a bit. We have got to reopen bulls and sandbars and hammers and such that we did have a market for them. We were selling them. They had been commercially harvested. They were staying in balance with the rest of the population. Man, something's out of whack now, isn't it?
Well, the problem is, Captain Rick, you and I know this. If we don't have common sense regulation, we're not going to fix any of the problems we have.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And sharks are one of the issues. And it's always strange to me the way now you and I both know that red snapper are overpopulated in our areas. They certainly are on the East Coast. I really can't speak for you, but now they've taken over so many of the reefs. And we don't seem to want to address that. Now they're talking about for 2023, no red snapper season in the summer because we overfished our red snapper in our whopping 2-day season last year.
Yep. I mean, I don't want to make a comment that, goes off the board here, but I mean, we have got to address some common sense regulations.
I couldn't agree with you more, Cap. And I think gag grouper is a good place to start. Maybe we need to tighten up the limits there a little bit, or we need to do something or figure out why they're not coming inshore anymore. Kevin, thank you so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Captain Rick, you can talk to me next week, but I want to wish everybody and yourself a Merry Christmas.
You too, Cap. No doubt about it. You have a great Christmas, and we'll talk to you before New Year's. Our thanks to Kevin Lanier for a great Panhandle report. Now we're going to head all the way out. This guy's got 1 foot in Alabama and the other foot in Florida. One Captain Tyler Massey. How we doing, Skip?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Doing excellent. Has anybody been able to get offshore since we talked last?
Yeah, there's been a few days been able to sneak offshore for sure. this time of year it's kind of rare to be able to make it real far and try for wahoos and that kind of stuff. But the fads that we talked about before, that they're anywhere there's the closest one's about 50, the furthest one's just under 80 miles. The wahoo bite's been really good at these fads. If you can find a nice day, nice weather to sneak out there, troll some lip plugs or some weighted heavy islanders, that kind of stuff, the bite's been pretty good. Decent numbers of fish and not too big of ones, but any wahoo's a good catch in my book.
Ooh, they all taste good. Hey, let me ask you a question, Tyler. Over here, high speeding is completely taken over wahoo fishing. I mean, there's boats everywhere you look. It looks like everybody's running. They're not running. They're doing 20 knots on the troll. Has that become the big deal over there that it is on the East Coast?
Yeah, there's quite a few boats that catch all their wahoo doing that. I'd say for the average recreational though, it's more of a they're not quite doing that here yet. It's more pulling the lip plugs at maybe 7 to 10 mile an hour type thing. Yep. And then also hoping for another species. Once you get into that high speed stuff, you're pretty much just targeting wahoo. And over here, it's a little bit, there's a decent chance to catch other stuff too.
Yeah, and I would never give away the secrets on the lip plugs. But if you were to pull a Rapala CD18 in mackerel color, it might get bit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep, that's my favorite. Tyler, that's great. You heard anything inshore?
So inshore fishing, we've definitely seen an increase in the sheephead bite on the bridges. It's still kind of early over here. In the early in the wintertime, we catch them at the bridges that are more closer, further down in the bay. Up there near the river, there's a I-10 bridge. There's a couple other causeway bridges. The bridges in the center of the sound. It's just the beginning of our little sheephead run here. They're going to be making their way towards the pass as we get to the springtime, and that's fishing right up against the pilings using live shrimp or live fiddler crabs. Rod tip touching the bridge pilings. It's a delicate bite, and it's not for everybody. But if you can, find nice weather, get some good bait, you can definitely pick off a few sheephead on these bridges too.
I tell you what, them fried up on the table is for everybody. That's about a fine tasting fish.
That's my favorite eating fish for sure.
Yep, me too. Cap, we appreciate it so much. Hey, let me ask you a quick question before you go. All right, last week we talked about what fish outperformed what we thought they'd be like in 2022. Up in Northeast Florida, we had a little better mahi run than I thought we would. That was probably our star of the show. What fish has disappointed you this year and you haven't had the numbers that you thought you should have?
Over the whole course of the summer, I think the one that disappointed me the most was our king mackerel bite. It's usually something that you can almost count on. If the snapper season's closed or whatever and you're staying closed, you can go out and catch a few. This year it was some really good fishing, but only short periods of time. So like you catch them for 3 days, you wouldn't catch them for 10. Normally the summertime bite, I'm saying summertime from end of April all the way into November. If you can stay pretty close, pull live baits around, pull some lures around, and have catch 3, 4, 5, however many you want. This year it's just it's kind of like you catch 4 or 5 or nothing. It's been pretty good or just none at all, and it just was super inconsistent for us, and it wasn't something you could count on.
I'll be darned. Okay. All right. I haven't heard too much disappointment in kingfish. I think it's localized out there. And
definitely. They could have been offshore further. They just weren't where we typically fish for them.
Right. Now, I think I can speak for most places in Florida for being disappointed in cobia this year. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a thing for maybe 4 or 5 years up here. Everyone gets their hopes up that they might be, coming through in the springtime or whatever, and then it just doesn't happen. But we did catch a few, just wreck fishing throughout the summer. But it's nothing you can guarantee, and you just feel lucky anytime you catch one.
Yeah, but Tyler, I like the new regulations, and I want to think that better days are ahead for us on the cobia. We'll find out.
I agree too. I agree for sure.
Cap, I can't thank you enough for all your great reports this year. You've done a fantastic job, and I sure hope you and your family have a great Christmas.
You too, Rick. We'll see you guys.
Captain Tyler Massey from Flora-Bama, if you will. Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state tonight. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of guys with some interesting takes on fish. I was very surprised to hear Brandon Storen say that The tarpon weren't what he thought they'd be, and the mahi weren't what they thought they'd be. I know their spring mahi was just not good this year. Fall got a little better for them. You come around the West Coast, and boy, it's hard to tell because Ian just changed everything. It was so great to have Greg Stamper back on the air and, more importantly, back on the water and supporting his family, thanks to the guys that are loaning him boats and getting him set up and getting him away to take his customers fishing until his boat is done. But I tell you what, if you have problems, always count on the fishermen. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. It's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids, you need to check out youngboats.com. By Castaway Hat Company, the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors, right stuff, low price, every day. As for us, we're going to be back next week after we open our Christmas presents and find out what's going on around Florida with another Florida Sportsman Action Spotter. Until then, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the riff.